on
Do
your
you
body.
literally tell the sleep paralysis demon to go touch grass?
I literally will tell the sleep paralysis demon to go touch grass. Because the fact is that it's not a demon. It's a confused, lost personality. Welcome everybody to Unraveling the Unexplained. My name is Kat, and I am a longtime astral traveler and spirit consultant. This is my brother John, longtime fan of the creepy and the paranormal.
Good evening.
And he has picked out a video for me to react to. I don't know what it is, but we are about to find out together.
Hello everybody, Shrouded Hand here. Today I'm going to look at the real-life inspiration for one of my favourite horror films, A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Ooh, me too.
This video is part of a collaboration with the Proper Horror Show channel. Without further ado, let's dive into the real horror behind A Nightmare on Elm Street.
We don't need an excuse to talk about Freddy Krueger.
Not really, no. Kind of a horror icon.
An icon. I grew up in that era where like all those movies were coming out.
Yeah, the Nightmare on Elm Streets were always kind of the more on the entertaining side of the slasher film genre, kind of more interesting. Freddy always had more personality than the likes of Jason or Michael Myers.
Absolutely. Yeah, drop a comment. Let us know what your favorite horror movie franchise was, but I am absolutely a big fan of Nightmare on Elm Street for sure.
For an American movie about a demonic dream janitor, the true story has a pretty surprising origin: Laos and the Cambodian killing fields. Between 1975 and 1979, the communist Khmer Rouge regime, led by Pol Pot, committed one of the worst atrocities in human history. The Khmer Rouge attempted to create a communist agrarian society. They forcibly relocated millions of people to the countryside and forced them to work on collective farms. This led to famine, disease, and death. Mass executions, torture, and violence were used to maintain control and eliminate enemies. As you can imagine, life under such terrible regimes would have done some serious psychological damage, so it didn't seem too out of place when refugees escaping to America started having terrible nightmares. These nightmares were particularly prevalent among the Hmong refugees. They claimed an evil presence, known as the Da Cho, would appear to them when they fell asleep. In an interview, one Laotian man would later describe his encounter with the Da Cho. First, I was surprised, but right away I got real scared. I was lying in bed. I was so tired because I was working very hard then. I wanted to go to school, but I had no money. I kept waking up because I was thinking so much about my problems. I heard a noise, but when I tried, I could not move. My bedroom looked the same, but I could see in the corner a dark shape was coming to me. It came to the bed, over my feet, my legs. It was very heavy, like a heavy weight over my whole body, my legs, my chest. My chest was frozen like I was drowning. I had no air. I tried to yell so someone sleeping very close to me will hear. I tried moving, using a force that I can, a strength that I can have. I thought, what if I die? After a long time it went away. It just left. I got up and turned on all the lights. I was afraid to sleep again. The Da Cho does sound very much like your typical sleep paralysis experience. During sleep paralysis, a sleeper awakes to find that they cannot move their body. Then they become aware of a shadowy figure in the room with them. The figure slowly moves towards the bed before climbing on top of their body, inducing a suffocating, smothering sensation. This phenomenon of sleep paralysis appears to be ubiquitous across cultures worldwide. As such, the entity encountered during sleep paralysis is known by many names. The Old Hag is her English name. In Thailand, she's known as Phi Am. In Turkey, they have the Karabasan, the Dark Presser. In the Philippines, she is known as Batibat or Bangangot. Whatever the culture, the details are surprisingly similar. A dark-looking entity climbs on top of the sleeper and suffocates them. I personally have only ever encountered the Old Hag once, at least as far as I can remember. I was probably around 19 and I was going out with this girl. Often when I was sleeping over, I would have really weird dreams, and I remember her telling me that she'd once dreamt of a shadow being coming into the room and trying to drag her out of bed by her feet. Anyway, my sleep paralysis experience didn't involve the usual waking up scenario. I was in the middle of a regular dream, and I suddenly felt a weight on top of me as if someone was lying across me sideways, pushing the weight of their own torso down onto my face. It felt very deliberate and malevolent. I couldn't move a muscle and I couldn't breathe. I must have been gasping for breath and struggling because it woke my girlfriend up. She reached over and shook my arm, and as soon as she touched me, it sort of snapped me out of it and I woke up. There was nothing covering my face that was causing me to choke. It was purely the result of this extremely vivid dream. And essentially, that was my perception of sleep paralysis. A mere reverie, a figment of the imagination, although disconcerting.
Okay, so that can sometimes happen if
Yeah.
you're in if you're asleep or you're in a dream, and I've had it happen before. Is that we end up in all positions when we sleep, and if you are choking on something or you have a bout of sleep apnea or you can't breathe for whatever reason, your mind will process that and you will wake up eventually and start breathing again. So it's not uncommon for that to occur for people, right? If you have like some mucus that drips down your throat in the night, you need to wake up and clear your throat, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
For whatever reason you're having trouble breathing in your sleep, your mind will wake you up. So that is a thing that can happen. However, I have a hot take on sleep paralysis demons as well. I've been dealing with sleep paralysis demons since I was a kid. So some of the things that are we'll talk about it in a minute, but
So it's kind of like there's a half and half situation. You have an actual physical problem that is occurring, but it can also overlap with something else.
well, I just said that can happen. I didn't say that was what's happening in all cases.
That's what I'm saying.
It can happen that we are having trouble breathing in our sleep, and so the mind wakes us up to clear our throat or whatever. That is a thing that can happen. That's not what's happening in all cases, though. And for me, I've always been able to astral project. So the paralysis part of it was never, because I was able to get out of my body, I never had the trapped feeling. So I've
Right.
been active in the room with other presences in the room. So we'll get into it a little more later. Let's
Okay.
see what he has to say about it. But
Certain it posed no real threat. It was just a dream after all. But here's the strange thing about the Hmong refugees. What started out as simple nightmares became more and more vivid and terrifying. A number of them claimed to be frightened of falling asleep in case the dacho got them, and then it seems she did get them. People started dying in their sleep. Heartbroken family members are recounted witnessing their loved ones gasping and writhing in their beds, desperately struggling for breath. Whilst a few were fortunate enough to be awoken by a caring companion, many were not so lucky, and their lives were tragically cut short. According to this news article, the first documented case apparently occurred in Orange County in 1977, when a healthy young man named Lee Dower died in his sleep. Joanne Gill, then a county social worker, recalls the death because she knew Lee Dower so well. There was an autopsy which put down the cause of death as acute cardiac insufficiency. That's a fancy way of saying they didn't know exactly what killed him, she said. As more of these refugees started dying in their sleep, people noticed a pattern, and stories about these mysterious killer nightmares started hitting the headlines. It was these news reports that would inspire a young Wes Craven to create one of cinema's most iconic monsters. In an interview, he said, "It was a series of articles in the LA Times, 3 small articles about men from Southeast Asia who were from immigrant families and who had died in the middle of nightmares. And the paper never correlated them, never said, hey, we've had another story like this. The third one was the son of a physician. He was about 21. I've subsequently found out that this is a phenomenon in Laos, Cambodia. Everyone in his family said almost exactly these lines. You must sleep." He said, "No, you don't understand. I've had nightmares before. This is different." He was given sleeping pills and told to take them, and supposedly he did, but he stayed up. I forget what the total days he stayed up was, but it was a phenomenal amount. Something like 6-7 days. Finally, he was watching television with his family and fell asleep on the couch, and everybody said, "Thank God." They literally carried him upstairs to bed. He was completely exhausted. Everybody went to bed thinking it was all over. In the middle of the night, they heard screams and crashing. They ran into the room, and by the time they got to him, he was dead. They had an autopsy performed, and there was no heart attack. He had just died for unexplained reasons. They found in his closet a Mr. Coffee maker full of hot coffee that he had used to keep awake. They also found all of his sleeping pills that they thought he had taken. He had spit them back out and hidden them. It struck me as such an incredibly dramatic story that I was intrigued by it for a year at least, before finally I thought I should write something down about this kind of situation. It's interesting, if you're familiar with A Nightmare on Elm Street, how much of that story Craven managed to put on the screen. There has been 117 of these kinds of unexplained deaths reported among the Hmong refugee population in America. In all but one of the cases, they were young men with no pre-existing medical conditions that could have caused a sudden death. In one case, a man was rushed to hospital and successfully revived. It was found that he was experiencing ventricular fibrillation. As one doctor put it, the heart muscle was contracting without affecting normal beats, just sort of quivering. Doctors found no sign of any cardiac disease typically associated with heart attacks, so what was the cause? There was a widespread belief among the refugees that the nerve gas used on them during the Vietnam War was the cause of the nightmares and the deaths. This theory was dismissed by medical professionals who questioned why it would have such a delayed effect and only affect young men when thousands of people, men and women, young and old, had all been exposed to the gas. Another popular belief among the Hmong people was that they'd left their ancestor spirits behind in Laos and were unprotected from spiritual attacks. This left them vulnerable and allowed the Da Cho to attack them in their sleep. These nightmare deaths don't just affect the Hmong refugees, though. There are similar reports from other communities. In Japan, the phenomenon is known as Pokuri death syndrome. In Thailand, it's called Lai Tai, and in the Philippines, it's known as Bangungut. Same as the Hmong refugees, Pokuri, Lai Tai, and Bangungut seem to mainly affect young men. They die suddenly in their sleep for no obvious reason, and it appears to be associated with nightmares and sleep paralysis. The scientific community have named this phenomena SUNS, Sudden Unexpected Nocturnal Death Syndrome, but it seems that they still don't know why it happens or how to prevent it. Calling it Sudden Unexpected Nocturnal Death Syndrome is just a way of lumping together a series of unexplained deaths. It doesn't provide us with any real answers. The fact that it only seems to happen in Asian communities suggests that it could be what is known as a culture-bound syndrome, a pattern of mental illness and abnormal behaviour that is unique to a specific ethnic or cultural population and does not conform to any standard classifications of psychiatric disorders. I don't know about you, but that seems like another way of saying they don't know. Others have suggested that it could be caused by certain diets. Consuming excessive amounts of fish sauce have been posited as a factor. There are some articles that suggest.
Okay, I was trying to let it get. You know what I mean?
Continue,
I was trying.
Fish
sauce. You're taking it too far with blaming fish sauce or looking. And I'm not saying he is. He's obviously skeptical of all of these explanations.
You're talking
right?
about like the attempts at scientific explanation.
Yeah. This is no shade on him. He's obviously skeptical about these explanations, right? Because fish sauce, really?
What's in fish sauce
No.
that's known to cause choking,
That's
death in
not.
sleep, and nightmares?
That's obviously not what's happening. What science misses a lot of the time is the effect we as consciousness have on our own bodies. And to some degree, they know this. They know that people who are optimistic tend to recover better, whereas people who aren't, they know that there's some effect that our thought processes have on at least recovery from what they've observed, but they're not really putting together real correlations or anything that, they don't like anything they can't put in a test tube and shake around. And,
well, that is a basis of the scientific method, is that you need to be able to measure evidence and have it be repeatable and observable in order for it to be considered evidence.
Right, but the pitfall of that is that...
If you run into something that doesn't yet have a measurable spectrum, it's confusing.
Yeah, they don't have an explanation, and they avoid logical conclusions because they don't have a way to test it. But I would venture to say, okay, again, a lot of experience with sleep paralysis demons, right? And I want to make it clear to anybody watching or anybody that there is no, you are in control of your own energy. You are in control of your own thought processes. You are in control of your own energy output. But there are those personality constructs out there, non-corporeal personality constructs, that I don't want to say feed on energy, because it's not, feeding isn't the right word for it. It's like they gain momentum and power themselves from
being in the presence of certain other energies.
Correct. And a lot of people don't realize just how dense physical reality is and how much energy we put out in emotions like fear or lust. There's a lot of incubus and succubus stuff is also connected. It's a similar phenomenon happening. Anger. And for people who are experiencing this, I think that it has a tendency to affect men and women differently, because men and women are socialized to behave differently, right? Men will get a lot more aggressive and a lot angrier, a lot faster. Things will escalate. There's an action element, like the need to take action, the need to do something. And especially if you're in a paralysis state where you can't move your body, I'm venturing a guess. This is not, obviously I can't put it in a test tube for you either. But I would venture a guess that it actually affects males differently and on a much more unfortunate level here, because of that need to take action or do or fight, to the panic. So I would imagine that the energy actually just, it affects males differently because of that.
And you think that's why there are men being affected to the point of being dying in their sleep.
Yeah, they're essentially, heart gives out, right? Would be my guess as to this particular case where you're having a lot of deaths of young men within a particular culture. I'm not sure I would call it a cultural bound mental illness. Is just, that sounds so nope to me.
Well, it would seem like you would have to look at data and see, because I'm sure there are similar deaths in any culture. Because again, you mentioned earlier that the whole sleep paralysis thing is something that you find from all cultures all over the world. So clearly there would be probably people who have died in their sleep. Maybe it just didn't get reported the same way.
Well, and that was the point that I was going to make, is the only cultural difference, I think, is in a lot of other cultures, once again, men in particular, wouldn't talk about their dreams like they were important, or confess to somebody that they were having nightmares. It is less likely to be reported by the person experiencing it beforehand in some cultures than it would be in East Asian cultures, where dreaming it is a more important factor. This would be considered a lot more of a thing that would be acceptable to talk about and take seriously out loud, whereas in a lot of other cultures we tend to write off our dreams or not pay attention to them or think they're unimportant, and would be embarrassed to admit that as an adult we were having nightmares.
Yes,
Do you know what I mean?
And if Uncle Bob died in his sleep randomly, it might not get reported as a sleep paralysis problem.
Right, because probably Uncle Bob didn't feel comfortable telling anybody that that's what was going on. So I would, if there's a cultural element to it, I think it's in the reporting factor rather than
not in the fact
yes.
that there's a specific sleep paralysis demon that is really into going after Japanese and Thailand.
No, yeah. I think
that
it's just,
that wouldn't make much sense.
No, and it's a we have so far to come still, people. I would bet that it's a reporting issue.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. We'll finish up the video here, and I'll talk about some of my experiences with this type of activity. And
let's get past the fish sauce.
Let's get past the fish sauce. I just had to stop it there because it really bothers me to hear it blamed on a cultural superstition. These people's cultural superstition. That's really bothersome to me. So I had to stop and comment. I don't care for that.
This, again, though nothing conclusive has ever been proven. As it stands, nobody really knows what causes these nocturnal deaths, so I guess the dream demon hypothesis is still on the table. To be honest, recalling my own sleep paralysis experience, I can't imagine how people might choke to death or their hearts might stop during such an experience. I remember really feeling like I was gasping for breath. Perhaps this causes more deaths than we realise. Maybe people die suddenly in their sleep and we just don't make the link between the old hag and these mysterious deaths. And so that's part of what inspired Freddy Krueger. There were other influences that Wes Craven drew on, certain life experiences that inspired Freddy's appearance. We talk more about that sort of thing in Proper Horror Shows video. I just wanted to look at the dream demon aspect in my own video, so if you want to know more, go watch the talk that we had on Horror Shows channel. Nightmare on Elm Street is one of my all-time favourite movies. I've seen it dozens of times, so I really enjoyed talking about it. But I actually don't know that much about the director Wes Craven. Luckily, Horror Show is a walking encyclopedia when it comes to that sort of thing, so I learned a lot of interesting stuff, and I think we had a really good discussion. So go check that out. I'll put a link at the end of the video, and I'll put a link in the description, and wherever else I can put a link.
Absolutely.
Might be fun to watch sometime.
I'm guessing this is the end of the video.
Yeah.
Okay, so we will link all of that in the description as well. It sounds fascinating. Like, I'm going to have to click on it and check it out.
Yeah, we're a fan of horror films.
I'm a big fan of films, and we've even talked about doing some reviews of horror films ourselves on the channel, just to talk about, you know, what they were based on and what feels like, you know, exaggeration and what feels based on reality, at least to my perspective on here. So it sounds like a great show, and we'll link all that in the description. So, sleep paralysis demons, and to his point, this is a worldwide phenomenon. Different cultures have different ways of explaining it or interpreting it. Again, different people, different socializations, so the manifestations of this happen in different ways for different people. But some of it is very common, and to my understanding, as somebody who's dealt with, I can't even, hundreds of personalities that manifest like this, what can happen is when we, again, they're not wrong about what sleep paralysis is when portions of the mind become awake ahead of the body. There is this feeling like you can't move your body, like you're awake but trapped in your body and you can't move. This is not uncommon, and they have an explanation for that. Because I've always been an astral projector as well, I've always been able to just sit up and get out of my body, so I was never trapped in my body while any of this was occurring. But I understand many people are. Many people don't know that you can get out of your body, and so they feel trapped and panicked, stuck inside their body, which is absolutely a terrifying experience. It's not much less of a terrifying experience being able to get out of your body and move around the room with one of these things.
Yeah, especially if you doing it for the first time, you don't really.
Right. It's not. It is not much less of a terrifying experience, but at least not the trapped feeling on top of it, the suffocation feeling on top of it. That was never a thing for me because I was out and running around the room.
Yeah,
but
when was the first time that happened for you?
I was about 12 or 13 years old the first time. And that was a result of a summoning ritual that I performed. So, and because I was not trapped in my body, but outside of my body running around the room, I've always had the perspective or the feeling that this is not some magical brain fart that your mind created in order to, because you're scared. A lot of the explanations for sleep paralysis demons, at least on the scientific end of things, tend to run towards, like, your mind creates something frightening in the room because you're scared, because you're trapped and paralyzed. That was never the case for me, and there was always still an actual presence, an actual personality construct that was there. And for many years, absolutely terrifying, but a lot of exposure to it will happen is you go through the phase of being absolutely terrified. Then you go through the phase of being furious and angry, right? What are you? Why are you here? What do you want? Then you go through a phase of actually fighting. I went through a phase of actually fighting back, attacking, right? And eventually, over long periods of time, I got to the point where I was like, what are you? How long are we going to do this? Like, I'm not afraid and I'm not even angry anymore. I'm just tired. You know what I mean? So what is going on here? So at some point I got to a point where I was actually talking to them and interacting with them, because I was just done with the expenditure of intense energy. It was, anything that happens a lot, you get used to. So, and once I started actually talking and interacting, it was like definitely still trying to frighten you. I'm a laughing demon. I've had them tell me they are jinn. It kind of depends on what culture they originated from, how they'll identify. But all of that energetically, like once I was really solid in being able to sense energy and understand the layers of emotions and things that were going on underneath it, and then just some of the things that they said to me over time, you have one of two scenarios going on. Is these are either, they're all human-based constructs, individuals or individual personality fragments that were once human, because the emotional resonance, the emotional frequency, once you get past the fear and anger stages of things, it's all human feelings. Scared, lonely, angry or unhappy themselves. There was a lot of real, actual human feeling under there. And I got to the point where I realized that these are in-betweeners, people who are trapped, don't know how to cross over properly, they're not able to cross over properly into the next realm, and neither are they able to have enough momentum to reincarnate or push themselves back into this realm. I've literally had them tell me that what they want is bodies. And while it might be easy to interpret that as they were trying to steal my body, if they were going to steal my body, they would have done it by now. If they were capable of doing that, they would have done it. You know what I mean? There's plainly that they can't just do that. And so the intense human feelings, anger, fear, lust, those kinds of things, those are powerful momentum boosters. So if you're giving them that energy, that's what they came for, is the energy boost. The best thing that you can do in all of those situations is take a deep breath, remain calm, and realize that nothing actually affects your energy except for you. So having the mental or emotional control to keep yourself calm in those situations, like if you're not willing to play with them, mostly they go away. I've interacted with them where they're, as soon as I'm like, well, that's too bad for you because I don't play with monsters, they're like, and they leave. Because you're not giving them what they want. So if that's the track they're on, they'll take off. And then there are instances where I'm able to talk to them.
Isn't that basically exactly how Freddy Krueger's beaten in the first film? Nancy just turns her back on him, doesn't give him any more energy.
Yeah, actually, I think that is exactly what Nancy does in the first film. Doesn't stop him from going and pestering other people. So it's not really defeating him in any way, but it is certainly, if you just stop playing the game, like stop giving them what they want, they leave and go elsewhere.
Yeah.
The only way to actually defeat something like that is, it's not a defeat, it's compassion. It's turning the energy towards
positive things.
Correct, but that takes even a greater degree of removal and the ability to control your own energy and your own thought responses. When I do end up working with constructs like that are willing to stay and talk to me, the conversation turns to, well, maybe you're not a demon. Do you remember your name? Do you remember the sound of your mother's voice? Do you remember the feeling of grass? Do you remember the way light feels on your body?
Do you literally tell the sleep paralysis demon to go touch grass?
I literally will tell the sleep paralysis demon to go touch grass. Because the fact is that it's not a demon. It's a confused, lost personality that's been soaking in negative energy as the only energy it can get its hands on for a long time, and they become confused. Like, maybe I am a demon if this is what my existence is now. But reconnecting them with the positive memories, helping them remember who they are. It helps shift their frequency back to where the other side can reach them and help usher them back where they go. So really the only way to defeat that sort of thing is not to defeat it, but to help it get where it needs to go. But again, it took me 30 years of interacting with stuff like that to get my own energy to a point where I was no longer scared, no longer angry, no longer spiteful, no longer all of those things.
It took a while to work through all of that.
Right. So in the meantime, the best thing you can do is just take a deep breath, relax into the paralysis, realize you can wake up, it's fine, and just turn your energy off from the situation as much as you possibly can in order to wake yourself up and get out of the scenario.
All right.
I don't recommend whatever those young men were doing.
Clearly didn't work.
Yeah, fighting, angry, all it seems like
It's just exacerbated things.
yeah, it'll absolutely exacerbate the situation. So I do not recommend engaging. If that's not where your energy is, if that's not where your mental processes are, for sure. That's what I got on sleep paralysis demons.
All right.
Sounds good to you?
Yeah, makes sense to me.
Yeah, drop us a comment. Let us know what you think of the scenario. Like, subscribe, all of that fun stuff. And we will see you guys later on Unraveling the Unexplained.
Have a good evening, folks.